Ash, thanks so much for joining us to talk today. I'd like to hear a little bit about your 22 years in the military. That must have been something.
Well, honestly, it went very, very quickly. I only intended to join for 3 years, but I started life as a Gurkha officer for about 3 or 4 years and had my first deployments with them. And then became a helicopter pilot for a few more years after that before doing a number of more specialist roles for the last 15 or so years while I was in uniform, and then I retired last October to join the Crystal Group.
And how did you decide to make those various career changes?
They just seemed at the time opportunities that I couldn't refuse. You know, the idea of learning new skills is something that I've always wanted to try and continue. You know, learning new things is always exciting and fun, and I thought I could add value by doing that.
So could you tell me a little bit about the leadership experiences you remember, both yourself and then what you saw in your leaders that inspired you?
The things that really stand out to me today, now that I'm out of uniform, are more my failures than successes, honestly, because that's where I feel as a leader you learn the most, and that's where I certainly learned the most. And they're the most shocking, but they're the most valuable experiences for you to change as a leader and change the way that you support and lead others in terms of servant leadership. And Iraq was a good example of that in 2003 on a mission with a small team, and I was shot a couple of times, and a colleague of mine who was standing next to me was killed very sadly. And as a leader responsible for that team and for a number of others on the battlefield, as it were, that day, you know, I certainly failed, and that was a real shock to me to not bring everybody home safely, which is part of my responsibility. It was not only to have a successful mission and a positive outcome, but more importantly, or most importantly, was to make sure that your people were safe and to bring them back, and I failed in that regard. So that caused me to reflect and continue to think about the human impact of life in uniform and what it means to serve others and to look after others.
You mentioned how, as a leader, a lot of your greatest learning happens when bad things happen.
Yeah.
So you clearly had a difficult situation. What resilience techniques did you learn from that?
That you're part of a team and you support each other. So while I was in a leadership role, those that I was leading, they were also very much integral to the collective learning and support network. So we learned as a team while I was in charge, and it was ultimately my responsibility for not bringing everybody home. We were learning as a team, and you build up resilience and understanding how you cope under pressure. And over a number of years, I certainly found that when things were going wrong, that's actually where I, as a leader, felt more comfortable. When people were looking to you to solve a problem and look after them or create a positive outcome out of some negative experience, that's where I found myself sort of being more successful.